Mandalorian's second season is about to premiere on Disney+. For the occasion, I better talk about another Star Wars film. It used to be pretty simple. 3 classic sci-fi fantasy films released from 1977 to 1983, but then very suddenly, it exploded into a franchise, not just with other movies, but also with TV shows, comic books, novels, video games, etc. 1999 saw the release of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which starred a trilogy of films that took place before the events of the classic trilogy, exploring the difficult life of Anakin Skywalker, father of Luke Skywalker, before he converted to the dark side and became known as Darth Vader. 32 years before the events of A New Hope, Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi have the goal of peacefully ending a trade dispute. In order to do this, they must protect Queen Amidala of the planet Naboo. Eventually, we see the child Anakin Skywalker, who is a slave on the planet Tatooine and has a strangely strong connection with the Force. Yeah, the performance of Jake Lloyd as Anakin doesn't seem to show that a lot. He's got a little too much energy, and whenever he goes, yippee, it makes me wonder if I'm seeing red. I'm serious, this kid gives me a lot of trouble. I hate to beat down a dead horse with a whip, but Jar Jar Binks is even worse. What can I say about him that hasn't been said already? He's one of the most infamously bad Star Wars characters to ever exist. For the most part, he's pointless. The best he ever did was guide the Jedi to the underwater city so they can reach the Queen. For the rest of the film, though, he either gets himself into trouble or gets someone else into trouble. But then he would serve an important purpose in Attack of the Clones that would set in motion the events of the classic trilogy, but we'll get to that when I review Attack of the Clones. The part that especially irritates me about this character is his voice and his dialect.
Mr. Jar Jar Binks, he's your humble servant.
This could have been executed so much better. As for the rest of the characters, there's not really much to say. They're not very well developed, and the dialogue sucks. You get lines like, "Now this is pod racing. Are you an angel?" And my personal favorite, "There's always a bigger fish." Why is this such a huge contrast to the actual good lines from the classic trilogy, like, "These are not the droids you're looking for"? Droids don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. "Never tell me the odds." "Do or do not. There is no try. When 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not." And one of the running lines within all these films, "I've got a bad feeling about this." Yeah, that one. Let's see, what year did this film come out? 1999? That should be dated CG effects, right? Yeah, totally dated. It's okay for the time, but it's nowhere near as impressive as the effects we see in the classic trilogy. In those films, it was a mix of puppetry, animatronics, and guys in costumes. It looked much more convincing in those films than in this prequel trilogy. Because in these films, they use CG for almost everything. Complete eye candy that distracts from the story. If they ever make special editions for these prequels, one of the most obvious changes they should make is these effects. Speaking of the story, it's a little too much to grasp even for a Star Wars film. The classic trilogy had simple stories, yet with deep meanings. The prequels are a bit more complex, which isn't a bad idea, but it's often overshadowed by the negatives. Want me to make it simpler for you to understand? I like the idea that the stories are a bit more complex, but the downside is that the dialogue and characters are not very satisfactory, nor do they sound like they even come from a Star Wars film. Also, it's an example of something that's complex yet shallow, but comes from another story that was simple yet deep. It's just too cheesy for me to handle. That doesn't mean I hate it, though. For a long time, The Phantom Menace was my least favorite Star Wars film, despite me still liking it to an extent. But then the honor went to Last Jedi once I was able to grasp how bad that one actually was. If anything, the prequels clearly had a rough start. It wasn't quite there yet. I understand people who hate this film. I really do. Its problems are very obvious. I do like it for its merits more than its negatives, though. Just like in the classic trilogy, the action scenes are the highlights of the experience, especially when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fight Darth Maul, who was a pretty useless character. The fight itself is just awesome, easily the best part of the whole movie. Another cool moment from the film is the pod racing scene. but I feel that it's a little long and drawn out, especially before the race even begins. The Phantom Menace is, I feel, the weakest of the Star Wars prequel trilogy, but it's not totally unenjoyable. There are some great things about it, and it would thankfully be improved upon in the other two installments. Of course, we got a whole galaxy of Star Wars related content to take notice of in the future. We still haven't explored the entirety of the galaxy, and I have high doubts that fans would ever be satiated until we have. You could choose to either forget about the prequels, or you could accept them into your lives. I choose to accept them, but not without acknowledging their flaws. These are good films otherwise.